My name is Marin Delaney, and I'm 33 years old. Up until a few weeks ago, I would have told you my life was steady. Not exciting, not cinematic, just the kind of solid you can build on. I had a decent job in operations at a logistics firm, a 5-year plan in a color-coded spreadsheet, and a boyfriend I honestly thought I'd marry. His name is Dylan. We'd been together for 4 years, talking about rings and venues, saving for a wedding that felt more and more real every time we opened our shared budget. 6 weeks ago, we moved into a duplex on Maple Street, a side-by-side setup where each unit is a mirror of the other. 2 bedrooms, a little backyard, quiet neighborhood, decent coffee shop within walking distance. On paper, it looked like the beginning of our next chapter. We split the rent, argued about paint swatches, talked about kids in that half-serious, half-dreaming way couples do when they believe they have time. I used to stand in the tiny kitchen, air smelling like coffee and toast, and think, this is what stability feels like. Then the woman next door arrived, and everything I thought I understood about stable shifted. It was an early Saturday in September, the kind where the air feels thin and cold before the sun remembers what it's supposed to do. I was making coffee, watching the kettle steam, when Dylan glanced out the window above the sink and suddenly went still. "Oh my God," he breathed. "Someone's finally moving in next door." The other unit had been empty since we signed our lease. The landlord, Tom, had said he was looking for the right tenant, which I assumed was code for someone who won't grow weed in the bathtub. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and joined Dylan at the window. A U-Haul was backed into the driveway of Unit B. A woman was pulling boxes out of the truck like they weighed nothing. Tall, athletic build, dark hair in a messy knot, wearing a tank top even though it was barely 60 degrees out. She laughed at something the driver said, head tipped back, unbothered by the cold. "Cool," I said, half awake. "Guess we get a neighbor." "I should go say hi," Dylan said. "Be neighborly." "Yeah, sure," I murmured, pouring coffee into our mismatched mugs. By the time I set the pot back on the counter, he was already at the door. From the window, I watched him walk over like the sidewalk was pulling him. He waved, and the woman turned, recognition flashing across her face so fast I wasn't sure I'd seen it correctly. They started talking. A minute passed, then 5. Dylan said something, and she laughed. This sharp, bright laugh I'd never heard from her before, then again, high-pitched, like she was trying to prove she found him funny. When he finally came back inside, his cheeks were flushed in a way that didn't match the temperature. "Her name's Haley," he said, a little too quickly as he kicked his shoes off. "Haley Cross. She seems really nice. She's a personal trainer." "Nice," I said, handing him his coffee. "She just moved here from Portland," he added, like he needed to justify why he knew so much already. "Doesn't know anyone in the area. I told her we'd help if she needed anything." There was a tiny, almost invisible thread that tugged in my chest. Nothing painful yet, more like a warning. I ignored it. Dylan had always been friendly. That was normal. Except, as it turned out, it wasn't. Not this time. Over the next week, Haley became a kind of background presence I couldn't stop noticing. She'd be outside watering plants right as Dylan pulled into the driveway. She'd take out her trash when he stepped outside with ours. I started to notice patterns. Their conversations lasted 10, 15, sometimes 20 minutes. Dylan would come back in afterward lighter, like he'd just taken off a heavy coat. I told myself I was being paranoid. It was harmless. She was new. He was nice. That's all. Then the balcony thing happened, and pretending it was nothing got a lot harder. Our duplex has narrow balconies off the primary bedrooms, facing each other across the small strip of backyard, maybe 15 feet between railings. One Thursday evening, I was in the living room with a game humming in the background, scrolling absent-mindedly through my phone, when I heard Dylan laughing upstairs. Not just laughing, that laugh. The one that's half show, half flirt, an octave higher than his normal voice. The one I'd always assumed was reserved for me. I muted the TV and followed the sound down the hallway. The bedroom was empty except for the soft glow of the bedside lamp and the open balcony door. Cool air drifted in, carrying voices. I stepped out quietly. Dylan was leaning on the balcony railing, shoulders relaxed, talking to Haley, who mirrored his posture from her own balcony, a blanket thrown over her shoulders. The distance between them felt obscene, like 2 people pressed up against a window instead of glass and air. "And then you just went straight into the pool," she was saying, laughing. "You were so sure you could land that backflip." "Oh my God, don't remind me," he groaned, grinning. "I had bruises for weeks." Worth it, she said. We couldn't stop laughing. They weren't talking like new neighbors. They were talking like people who shared a past I'd never heard about. Inside jokes, shared memories, a rhythm that comes from repetition, not coincidence. I stepped closer. Hey. Dylan jerked slightly and turned. Oh, hey babe, I was just talking to Haley. Haley smiled, all teeth and easy charm. Hi, we were just remembering a stupid pool party. I looked from one to the other. How do you two know each other? Silence dropped like a stone. Dylan's smile faltered. Haley shifted her weight, fingers tightening on the railing. For a moment, neither of them spoke, each waiting for the other to answer. Dylan cleared his throat. We went to college together. Same program, Haley added quickly. We had a bunch of classes. I blinked. You never mentioned knowing her. I didn't recognize her at first, he said too fast. She goes by her last name now. In school, everyone called her Cross. Haley laughed weakly. Yeah, long story. Reinventing myself or whatever. Huh, I said. My heart was starting to pound, but my voice came out flat. Small world. Yeah, Dylan echoed. Real small. I went back inside before my face could betray anything. I heard Dylan say something like, I'll text you, before he followed me in. You okay? He asked in the hallway. I'm fine, I said, climbing onto the bed and grabbing my phone like I'd been about to do that anyway. You seem weird. I just think it's interesting you forgot to mention you knew the new neighbor, I said, not looking up. I didn't forget, he said, defensive. I just didn't think it was a big deal. We were friends in college, Marin, that's it. Friends, huh? I asked. You two seem pretty close for just friends. He exhaled hard. You're reading way too much into this. Maybe I was, maybe I wasn't. Either way, I let it drop, out loud. In my head, I filed it away like I do with every unexplained discrepancy at work. A strange number in a report, a missing signature, a timestamp that doesn't match. That night, I couldn't sleep. Dylan fell asleep fast, his back turned to me, breathing slow and even. The room was dark except for the faint blue glow of his phone screen on the nightstand. That glow started to feel like it was staring back at me. I told myself not to check, that going through someone's messages was a line you don't cross unless you already know the relationship is over. But the thing about being good with data is once you know there's a missing piece, your brain won't let it go. When Dylan got up for a shower, the decision made itself. Water started running in the bathroom. The fan whirred on. I waited 3 long seconds, then reached for his phone. It was locked. My stomach dipped, but muscle memory is a traitor. I'd watched him unlock it 1,000 times. 4 digits, his old jersey number. The screen opened. My thumb hesitated only a heartbeat before I tapped messages, then Instagram, then, finally, Facebook. There it was, a thread pinned near the top. Haley Cross. I opened it. The conversation started 3 weeks ago. Haley, please tell me this is actually Dylan Hart from Westfield and not some creepy catfish. Dylan. Ha. It's me. Wow. Didn't think I'd ever see your name pop up again. Haley. Apparently we both decided to relocate to the same random town. Universe has jokes. Dylan. Guess so. We should catch up sometime. Coffee? Haley. Definitely. I still owe you for not letting me drown at that pool party. My chest tightened. I scrolled. Haley. Can't believe you're seriously talking wedding stuff. Look at you growing up. Dylan. Yeah, it's been good. Marin's great. Haley. Better than us, I hope. Dylan. LOL. We were a mess. Haley. Fun mess, though. Us. Not we were classmates. Not we used to study together. Us. I kept scrolling, my pulse like static in my ears. Dylan. Marin's working late tomorrow if you want to grab that coffee. Haley. I'm free. 3 p.m. at Riverside? Dylan. Perfect. Same old spot, different city. Riverside Cafe. The same place he'd told me he was meeting a coworker named Jason last week because it's halfway between the office and home. I stared at the messages until the words blurred. My hands felt oddly steady, like the rest of me had gone into some emergency protocol. Collect facts now, feel later. The shower cut off. Panic shot through me. I closed the app, locked the phone, and set it back exactly where it had been. Then I slid under the covers and turned onto my side, eyes squeezed shut. When Dylan came back into the bedroom, the air shifted with the scent of his body wash. The mattress dipped as he lay down. After a long, heavy silence, his hand brushed my shoulder. You awake? He whispered. I kept my breathing slow and even, pretending to sleep. His hand hovered for a second, then withdrew. He turned away. In the darkness, staring at the wall, I replayed every laugh on that balcony, every prolonged conversation in the driveway, every unremarkable, just a friend I'd ever let slide. A version of me, the softer, trusting one, quietly died in that bed while the water was still cooling in the pipes. The version that survived started making plans. I didn't confront Dylan that night or the morning after. I needed space between the truth and my reaction, breathing room to understand the shape of the problem before I touched it. My brain works in systems: cause, effect, consequence, threat mapping. I wasn't going to stumble into an argument without knowing exactly what I was dealing with. But even with a plan forming in the back of my mind, the days that followed stretched and tightened like elastic pulled too far. The balcony conversations didn't stop. If anything, they multiplied. Every evening around 7, like clockwork, I heard Dylan's voice floating down the hallway or drifting through the kitchen window. Sometimes it was just laughter. Sometimes it was that quiet, smooth tone he uses when he's flirting without wanting to seem like he's flirting. Sometimes it was the sound of Haley's bright, ringing laugh, echoing back. I started documenting the timing, not out of obsession, but habit. It's what I do at work when something feels off, when numbers don't match, or orders don't align with timestamps. You track inconsistencies to see whether they're errors or patterns. Monday, 23 minutes. Tuesday, 19 minutes. Wednesday, 31 minutes. Thursday, I stopped counting because the sound of them laughing together made something inside me crack in a way counting couldn't fix. But I kept writing it down anyway, because data matters even when you think it doesn't. On Friday night, I decided to talk to him. He was in the kitchen, making dinner, pasta with jarred sauce, his fallback when he was trying to seem helpful but didn't actually want to cook. Steam fogged up the window, and the smell of garlic powder hung heavy in the air. "Dylan," I said quietly. He didn't look up right away. "Yeah? We need to talk." His hand paused mid-stir. "About what?" "About Haley." He set the spoon down a little too hard. "What about her?" "You dated her." The silence that followed was sharp and metallic. "Who told you that?" he asked, though his tone already conceded the answer. "Does it matter?" I asked. He sighed, ran a hand through his hair. "It was a long time ago, Marin. College. Years before I even met you. It didn't seem relevant." "You've been talking to her every day," I said calmly. "She's our neighbor. I'm being friendly." "You lied about the coffee meetup," I said. His whole face went red. "Were you going through my messages?" "Were you lying to me?" I countered. "That's not the point," he snapped. "That's exactly the point." My voice stayed level, but inside I felt something shifting, like I was stepping out of the version of myself that prioritized harmony above truth. He took a breath, visibly trying to steady himself. "I wasn't flirting. It's harmless. Just conversation." "Right," I murmured. "Because people always reminisce about staying warm in Tahoe with their exes on balconies for half an hour after work." His eyes widened. "You were listening?" I didn't bother answering. He already knew. "Marin," he rubbed his forehead, "you're blowing this out of proportion." "When's the last time we talked for even half that long?" I asked. He didn't answer. "Exactly." I grabbed my keys from the hook by the door. "Where are you going?" he asked. "Out." "Marin, I need air." I left before he could say anything else. My car felt colder than the night air, like the upholstery absorbed the tension from the house. I drove without destination until muscle memory took over and steered me toward the small office park where my friend Marcus Webb kept his property management business. The lights were still on inside. He was sitting at his desk with a stack of papers, glasses slipping down his nose, the picture-perfect portrait of someone who hadn't allowed himself to go home yet. He looked up when I stepped inside. "Marin," he said, "you look like hell." I sat down across from him. "I need a favor." "What kind?" he asked, leaning back slowly. I started at the beginning. The move-in, the balcony conversations, the secret coffee date, the messages I wasn't supposed to see. He listened without interrupting, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief to quiet, simmering anger on my behalf. When I finished, he exhaled. "Okay," he said, "what do you need from me?" "The duplex," I said. "I need options." He blinked. "Explain." "I called our landlord," I said. "Asked what happens if one of us wants off the lease. He said the other can take over or do a transfer." "And?" Marcus asked. "And I asked about Haley's unit. He said she's month to month, but planning to sign a year lease soon." Marcus's eyebrows rose. "So you want me to, what? Buy the building?" "If you can," I said, "or at least make an offer." He stared at me like he was weighing my sanity. "Marin, that's extreme." I nodded. So is meeting your ex for coffee while lying about it. He closed his eyes for a moment. Even if I could, what does booting her solve? It removes the proximity, I said. It forces everyone to reevaluate their choices. He leaned forward. The problem isn't Haley. I swallowed. I know. So what's your actual plan? I looked him straight in the eye. Control. I want control, not revenge, not sabotage, just control of the situation. Because right now, I feel like I'm drowning in someone else's choices. Marcus was quiet for a very long time. Finally, he whispered, I can try. Thank you, I said softly. You sure about this? He asked. No, I said, but staying quiet while he emotionally cheats on me through a balcony wall isn't an option anymore. He nodded slowly, resigned. I'll make some calls. The next 3 days were a blur of ordinary actions layered over extraordinary tension. Dylan and I barely talked. The house felt tight and airless, like it was shrinking around us. Every time I heard Haley's voice carrying across the yard, something inside me twisted, then hardened. Marcus called me on Monday morning. It's done, he said. I own the duplex. I sat down on the edge of the bed. Both units? Both, he confirmed. Cash deal. Tom wanted out. Timing was unreal. A strange calm washed over me. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just certainty. Now the second part, I said. Marin. He hesitated. This is where it gets messy. I know. You sure you want to go through with all of it? Yes, I said, my voice steady. Every step. He exhaled. Okay, I'll draw up the new leases. After we hung up, I stood in the bedroom staring at the quiet balcony beyond the glass. That 15-foot distance had been enough space for Dylan to lie, to flirt, to cheat in all the ways that don't leave physical evidence but leave emotional wreckage. If he needed space to figure himself out, I was going to give him plenty. Just not in the way he expected. Marcus wasn't wrong. This was the messy part. The part where suspicion stops being an internal storm and becomes a plan with edges, timestamps, signatures, and consequences. But once I made the decision, something strange happened. I went calm. Not peaceful, just steady. Like I'd finally stepped into the version of myself that stops waiting to be reassured and starts taking charge. The new leases arrived in my inbox on Thursday afternoon. Marcus texted, "Lease is ready. Yours signed. His unsigned. You sure?" I didn't respond right away. I just stared at the PDF on my screen. My name alone at the top of the Unit A lease, and Dylan's name typed neatly on the Unit B one. Separate spaces, I murmured aloud, testing the words in the quiet of our bedroom. It sounded almost therapeutic, almost fair. Except the context wasn't therapy, it was consequences. I printed the documents, slid Dylan's into a plain envelope, and tucked mine into my tote bag. Then I returned to the bedroom closet. His clothes hung exactly where they always did, shirts arranged by color, his few suits toward the back, a handful of hoodies he never threw away because he claimed they had character. I started with the hoodies, then the shirts, then the pants. Not everything, just enough. Enough to signal a beginning, enough to signal an ending. By the time I zipped the last suitcase, the late afternoon sun had shifted through the blinds, carving pale lines across the carpet. Dust floated in the air like static. I rolled the suitcases into the spare bedroom, one by one, lined them neatly along the far wall, closed the door quietly behind me. There was something deeply, unnervingly satisfying about the sound of the latch clicking. Next step, inform the landlord. Or, technically, the ex-landlord. I dialed Tom's number. Brad, sorry, Marin, he corrected himself. What's up? I heard the property sold, I said. Yep, closed 3 days ago. New guy seems squared away. Right, I said, as if I didn't already know the new guy by his middle school nickname. So about our lease? New owners honoring all existing leases, Tom said. You two are fine. I was actually wondering, I continued, if Dylan and I could split the lease temporarily. That's unusual, Tom said, voice tightening with landlord instincts. I know, I said softly, but we'd both pay rent. No risk to the owner. Well, he said, like I said, it's not my place anymore. You'd need to talk to the new landlord. Here's his number. He rattled off Marcus's number. I thanked him, pretended to write it down, hung up, took a deep breath, texted Marcus instead. Me. Can you handle the lease split? Marcus. Already drafted. You want me to deliver it, or are you giving it directly? Me. I'll do it. The cursor blinked for a moment. Then Marcus replied. Marcus. Dylan's not going to react well. Me. I know. Marcus. And Haley? Me. She'll have 30 days, just like you said. Marcus, you're sure about everything? Me. More sure than I've been about anything in months. That night, Dylan didn't come home until after 9. He smelled like cold air and cologne, not the office. He tried to sneak in quietly, like I was asleep. I wasn't. I listened to him undress in the dark, to the soft sounds of his phone buzzing, to a message being typed and quickly deleted, then typed again. I didn't turn toward him. He didn't turn toward me. 2 bodies sharing a bed and nothing else. Saturday morning, I woke early. I moved through the kitchen quietly, made coffee, toasted bread, normal motions in a house that no longer felt normal. I set Dylan's lease envelope on the counter, right where he'd see it the second he walked in. Then I left. I needed him to find it without me watching. I drove to the gym and stayed there almost 3 hours, moving through machines mechanically, letting my body carry weight so my mind didn't have to. When I finally returned home, Dylan was sitting on the couch, holding the envelope like it was a diagnosis. His face was chalk white. "Marin," he said, "what is this?" "My new lease," I said calmly, "and yours." His voice cracked. You're moving out?" "No," I said, "you are." He blinked hard. "This isn't funny." "It's not a joke," I said, setting my keys on the counter. "You can't just relocate me," he stammered. "You can't." "I can," I said quietly, and I did. His breath went shallow. "You bought the building?" "Marcus did," I said, "but the leases are real." He shook his head over and over. "Marin, this is insane." "No," I said softly. "What's insane is texting your ex behind my back, meeting her for coffee, reminiscing about staying warm in Tahoe, and then standing 15 feet from our bed, flirting with her on a balcony." His face flamed red. You recorded us?" "You lied," I said, repeatedly. Dylan's voice dropped to a whisper. "I'm sorry. I am. It didn't mean anything." "Then why'd you do it?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "It was just nice to feel wanted. You've been so distant lately." For the first time in days, I felt something. Not anger, not heartbreak, just clarity. "I've been distant," I repeated, "but I'm not the one having secret coffee dates with someone I used to sleep with." He flinched. "You've got until Monday," I said. "Your suitcases are already in the spare room." "You packed my clothes?" he whispered, like that was the real betrayal. I was saving time. His voice cracked. "Marin, please don't do this. We can fix this." "No," I said. "We can't fix something when you're still pretending it isn't broken." Tears spilled down his face. Actual tears. For a moment I almost softened. Almost. But then I remembered the way he'd laughed with Haley. The way he'd leaned into the railing like he belonged there more than beside me. I stepped back. "You're moving to Unit B," I said. "Your lease starts Monday." His voice went small. "And Haley?" "She's leaving," I said. 30 days. "Where's she going?" he asked helplessly. "Don't know," I said. "Don't care." I walked past him, opened the front door, and let the cold air fill the hallway. "You have the weekend," I said quietly. "Figure it out." And then I left him sitting there, still clutching the envelope like he could keep the world from shifting by holding on tightly enough. I thought the hardest part would be delivering the envelope. I was wrong. The hardest part was the stillness that followed. When I came home later that evening, the house felt too quiet, like the air itself was waiting for something to happen. Dylan was sitting on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, staring at nothing. His eyes were red-rimmed. His shoulders slumped in a way I'd never seen. The envelope lay open beside him. His signature line was still blank. He looked up when I stepped into the doorway. "Marin," he whispered, voice hoarse, "you don't have to do this." The wild thing was, he sounded like he believed it. He sounded like he thought we could still rewind, go back to the moment before he stepped out onto that balcony, before he sent the first message, before he let nostalgia chip away at the foundation of our life together. But there wasn't a rewind button for emotional betrayal. There never is. "We don't need to drag this out," I said softly. "You have the weekend." He rose slowly, like moving through fog. "I messed up, Marin. I know I did. But this feels punishing." "It's not punishment," I said. "It's clarity." His jaw tightened. Clarity would be talking this out, not... He gestured helplessly toward the envelope. "This isn't normal." "You're right," I said. "Normal would have been telling me the truth." His face crumpled. "And normal," I continued, "would have been setting boundaries with your ex instead of treating our relationship like some comfortable safety net you could disrespect in private as long as you kept up the right tone in public." He didn't reply. Couldn't. Because we both knew those conversations with Haley were not friendly. They were intimate. Familiar. A slow slide back into a dynamic he hadn't finished grieving. A dynamic he hadn't told me existed. The next morning began with tension so thick it felt like humidity. I walked into the kitchen to find Dylan sitting at the island, both hands wrapped around a mug he wasn't drinking from. He had dark circles under his eyes, hair tousled, face drawn. The suitcases were still in the spare room. He hadn't packed another thing. He looked up. We need to talk. I opened the fridge. We've been talking. No, he said firmly. You've been deciding. I've been trying to keep up. His voice didn't hold anger. It held fear. A fear I recognized too well, because it was the same fear I felt when I first saw that balcony laugh. I closed the fridge and leaned against the counter. What do you want to talk about? He swallowed. Everything. So we did. Or rather, he did. He talked. And for once, I let him. I didn't expect her to move in next door, he said. I swear I didn't. That's not the issue, I said. He nodded. I know. The messages were stupid. I should have told you she reached out. I should have told you we met for coffee. You told me you were meeting Jason, I reminded him. You lied. His shoulders hunched. I did, and I'm sorry. Why? I asked quietly. For lying? For wanting her attention? His eyes jumped to mine. He didn't answer right away. Silence stretched, thin and sharp. Finally, he exhaled. Because she knew me before I knew how to be better. I blinked. He rubbed his hands over his face. It wasn't about wanting her back. It was about, God, I don't even know. Feeling like the version of myself she knew was easier. Less pressure. Less expectation to be someone who doesn't screw up. You didn't screw up, I said softly. You made choices. That hit him harder than I expected. He stared at the table like the grain pattern held all the answers he never looked for. I wasn't trying to cheat, he whispered. I never touched her. Emotional cheating never requires touch. People say that like it's a defense. It isn't. Dylan, I said, you planned meetings with her around when I was gone. You shared old stories. You told her things you didn't tell me. He flinched, eyes glassy. You weren't just reconnecting, I said. You were escaping. He didn't deny it. The rest of the morning blurred into an endless loop of apologies, explanations, half-formed justifications that died the moment he heard himself speak them. Not once did he ask why Haley was being evicted. Not once did he ask how Marcus bought the building. Not once did he acknowledge the 15 feet of air between the balconies where most of the damage happened. Because in his mind, the problem wasn't proximity, it was opportunity, and he'd taken it. By noon, he seemed wrung out, a shell. We sat in silence until he finally whispered, Do you really want me gone? I opened my mouth, closed it again. Truth felt dense in my throat. I said slowly, to not be someone you betray in whispers. He looked like he'd been punched. And I don't know if that's someone you can be with me, I said. He closed his eyes. His voice shook. I love you. I nodded. I believe you. But you're still making me leave, he said numbly. You left, I said, the moment you chose to lie. He pressed a hand over his mouth like he was holding something in. Guilt, grief, regret. Maybe all three. Marin, he said quietly, please give me another chance. I am, I said, just not the one you want. His brow furrowed. I'm giving you the chance, I continued, to take accountability, to live with the consequences of how easily you let her back in. He recoiled like the truth had teeth. The move-out happened in small, painful waves. Dylan packed a few more things. Then he'd stop, sit on the bed, and stare at the floor like action was betrayal. The sound of drawers opening and closing followed me through the house. Soft thumps of boxes, muted footsteps across the hallway. By evening, he was officially moved into Unit B. We didn't talk during the process. We didn't even make eye contact. The last thing he carried into the hallway was a framed photo of us from 2 summers ago. His arm around me, both of us smiling in a way that feels foreign now. He held it a long moment before placing it gently in a box, sealing it shut with slow, trembling hands. When the door to Unit B clicked closed behind him for the first time, the sound echoed like a gunshot through the entire duplex. I stood in the quiet of Unit A, my heartbeat filling the silence. I wasn't relieved. I wasn't triumphant. I was grieving something I wasn't sure had ever really existed. A version of us where honesty wasn't negotiable. A version where the balcony had stayed just a balcony, not a confession space for 2 people who used to be us. I sat on the edge of my bed, hearing faint movement through the wall on the other side. Dylan unpacking, placing pieces of our shared life into a unit that symbolized everything we'd lost. And in that moment, I understood something with painful clarity. Taking control doesn't always feel like winning. Sometimes it just feels like choosing the pain you can live with. The first night without Dylan in Unit A felt wrong in a way I didn't have the vocabulary for. The duplex, once so full of background noise, 2 toothbrushes clinking in the same cup, The familiar weight of his footsteps walking down the hallway, the muffled sound of his shower running while I folded laundry, was suddenly hollow. Echoes had replaced presence. Every sound felt too sharp. Every silence felt too long. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to nothing and everything. The hum of the refrigerator, a distant dog barking, the occasional shift of the building settling. For the first time since the night I found those messages, my chest felt tight with something heavier than anger. It was grief, not for him, for the version of me who believed he wouldn't lie. Around 2 a.m., I heard faint movement through the wall on the other side. A drawer closing. A soft thud. Dylan adjusting to his new unit. He was 15 feet away, so close I could picture his silhouette moving through the mirror layout of my own bedroom, and yet he felt like a stranger I was overhearing in a hotel room next door. I rolled to my side, clutching the comforter, and whispered into the dark, "You did this to us, not me." But my voice didn't sound victorious. It sounded small, sad. The next few days passed in a slow, surreal rhythm. Dylan didn't knock, didn't call, didn't try to force a conversation. But he texted, always late at night, always short, always desperate in the way people get when they realize they've run out of defenses. "Dylan, are you awake?" Yes. Dylan, can we talk? Me. Not tonight. Dylan, please. Me. Not tonight. Sometimes he didn't reply. Sometimes he sent paragraphs I didn't open, long gray message bubbles that sat unread until they disappeared under the next apology. I didn't block him. I wasn't finished processing anything yet. I was hurt, not cruel. The day Haley got her 30-day notice was the first day I felt something like control again. She knocked on Dylan's door first. I saw her through my living room window, tall posture collapsing into confusion. She held the letter in both hands like it was radioactive. I couldn't hear the words, only the rhythms. Confusion, denial, rapid questions, Dylan trying and failing to explain. Then she knocked on my door. 3 times. Firm, clear, prepared for confrontation. I didn't open it, not because I was afraid, but because I owed her nothing. Haley wasn't the core problem. She never was. She was a symptom Dylan invited back into his life, a temptation he chose to indulge, a secret he decided was worth lying for. Let her be angry, let her be blindsided. I wasn't going to offer her any more of myself. By evening, she'd left a note under my door. I didn't read it, just slid it into the trash can without breaking the seal. 3 weeks later, she was gone. I watched from the kitchen window as she and a friend loaded the last of her boxes into the trunk of a silver Honda. Dylan helped her carry the final suitcase. Not intimately, not warmly, just awkward, defeated. Haley said something to him before getting into her car, something that made him look down at the pavement and nod. Then she drove away without looking back. I waited a full hour before stepping onto my balcony. The air was crisp, the sky a cloudless winter blue. I walked to the railing and looked across the 15-foot stretch of empty space where Dylan and Haley once shared their private laughter, their history, their emotional affair disguised as nostalgia. It was quiet now, finally quiet. I breathed in deep, letting the stillness settle. 2 nights later, Dylan texted again. Dylan, I'm moving out next month. I can't afford it alone. Me, okay. Dylan, that's it? Just okay? Me, what do you want me to say? Dylan, that you still care, that this matters. Me, it did matter. Dylan, past tense? Me, I learned something important. Dylan, what? Me, who you are when you think I won't find out. He didn't respond for hours. When he finally did, Dylan, I hate that I ruined this. Me, so do I. Dylan, do you hate me? Me, no. Dylan, then why can't we fix it? Me, because wanting to fix something isn't the same as being someone who won't break it again. This time he didn't reply at all. When moving day came, Dylan didn't knock on my door, didn't ask for help, didn't say goodbye. I heard him through the wall, boxes thudding softly, furniture shifting, the zipper of a duffel bag, the low murmur of him talking to someone on the phone. Then I heard nothing. A final click of a door closing, footsteps fading, a car engine starting, silence. Just like that, he was gone. For the first time in weeks, I stood alone in the center of Unit A and really looked at it. The walls we painted together, the sofa we argued about in IKEA, the dent in the baseboard from the time he dropped a toolbox and swore loudly enough the neighbors heard. Memories, yes, but not anchors. This place wasn't a reminder of our beginning anymore. It was a monument to what I survived. I walked onto the balcony, leaned on the cool metal railing, and looked out at the empty space between the units. No Haley, no Dylan, no laughter threading through the dusk like a secret I wasn't meant to hear. Just quiet. Just peace. Just me. For once, the absence felt like a gift. I didn't know what came next, whether I'd sell the place, stay a while, or start over somewhere else entirely. But I knew one thing with perfect clarity. I would never again ignore the kind of red flags people paint white with excuses. The version of me that tolerated subtle betrayals, minimized instincts, and softened truths had died the night I heard him giggling under his breath, trying to relive a life he never told me about. The version that remained, steady, certain, unwilling to compromise herself for someone else's nostalgia, was the one who walked back inside, closed the door gently behind her, and let the silence settle like a reset. I wasn't afraid of starting over. I was relieved. Because in the end, I didn't lose something real. I lost the illusion of it, and I gained myself back.